Hello and welcome to the Rogue Monkey podcast. We're the show that shares interesting human stories to inspire you on your journey. For our avid listeners, you'll know that we've had a little bit of a break across the summer whilst I've been moving house and creating a specialist space for the podcast to be recorded. And more will be coming on that very soon. I'm pleased to share with you today that our conversation is with someone who's been with the podcast since day one. Our guest today is Adam Jennings, the founder at Contour Creative Studio. And he was the person who designed our podcast logo back in 2019. He's someone that's got an awesome story himself, and we no doubt that you will enjoy today's discussion. We recorded this episode face-to-face in Adam's studio over the summer, and it is the first of a number of episodes that we're going to be recording with him, as Adam is someone I love working with, and he's got so many fascinating stories to share both professionally and personally. His company is extremely forward-thinking, and he is very values-driven in what he does. Our conversation centres around those values, and he shares some fantastic wisdom with us from his experiences so far. Also, a huge thank you to Adam's wife Lauren, who is both a former podcast guest and now our director of photography moving forwards. And you can find more about Lauren's work in the show notes. So we're going to dive into our conversation and get started with our first face-to-face episode of 2023, featuring Adam Jennings, founder at Contour Creative Studio. Okay, well, here we are. It's the first face-to-face live recording that we've done since the pandemic, and I'm here in Contour Creative Studio with Adam. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you. Very well. How have I managed to avoid being on your podcast and then the first one that I'm on where we play around with the recording, it's also filmed and done with lights and actual microphones and scariness?
Do you know what I think is also hilarious is that you were there before we had even recorded an episode because we were having a discussion about it, and you said, I'll design your logo. And that was back in 2019.
Yeah,
and
that
here
was
we
a
are.
mistake. Look where I am now.
I know. You've really lucked out on it. But for our uninitiated listeners out there, why don't you give us just a little bit of an introduction to who you are and a little bit about the studio and the brands that you've built?
So my name's Adam. I have a background in design. I now specialize in helping companies build brand identities. So not just looking at a logo, but all of the who, what, where, why behind someone should care that they exist. I now get to work with lots of different companies. The majority of the time it's startups and small teams, which means I get to take the time to really understand what they do and why they're special. And then we work on some cool stories, build out something that feels appropriate and right for them. And then we share it with the world, which is pretty fun.
So why creative design? Because looking at you, you're clearly quite a creative and out there guy, but give us a little bit of a story as to how that all started.
It's a difficult one to say where it started because it's never not been I go back to being 5 years old, entering art competitions and going on summer camps doing art, and I've always played with the paints and crayons and chalk. It's always been what I've gone to, and my parents definitely weren't afraid to encourage me to be creative, and my dad always supported me with sort of putting your time and energy into things that you enjoyed. And I always enjoyed being creative, so I just kept doing it. Ended up going to university, realized I still liked being creative, came out of it, found a job and still liked being creative. The idea of creating something that doesn't exist and then putting that out there in the world is really exciting. A bit scary at times, but that excitement of putting something fresh into the world and sharing that feels really fun. And it's great when I do it for other people. I'm not always so good at doing it for me, but that's one of the current challenges that I'm looking to navigate. So,
well, I think the fact it's taking us 100 episodes to get to this recording is kind of an example of how you struggle to perhaps do it for yourself sometimes, but you're happy to support others.
It's just easier to help other people. I can be like, hey, let me give you all the tools that you need. But having worked recently on a lot of our positioning and our website and proposals, realizing how difficult it is to articulate something that feels very big into something that is quite a short space of either words or short videos has given me an insight into how I can help my clients better, because it's not as straightforward as going, just put everything together, just pull this into a web page or what have you. So yeah, it's been an interesting experience, but I feel far more comfortable shining the light at others, because it just feels like just feels like a safer space. I don't have to shine the light at me.
I think this is quite interesting. You talk about kind of bringing stories to life and bringing other people's ideas and work and helping them tell their story, because I think that's ultimately why I started the podcast in the first place, to share people's stories that I found interesting. And I think having you kind of support along the way, like super proud to be now working with the studio, because I think seeing what you've done for so many other people, and you were there with me right from the start. So kind of looking forwards for you now, kind of having that empathy that you've now got for your clients of the challenges of it. What, I guess, does the next, say, 12 months look like for you? Because I think it's, like you said, it's a safe space doing it for other people, but now you're in this kind of unknown space doing it for yourself. What does that feel like going forwards?
Oh, there's definitely some nerves there, but it's also really exciting. I exist in a space now where it doesn't feel ethical to purely create a logo or create a single piece of media or content. There's a far bigger picture at play, and if you want the granular, like, micro moments, then there are people out there that can help you with that. But I'm trying to look at the bigger picture for both the brands that I work with, but for myself. So working on how I communicate that and position that in a way that both attracts the right people and who I want to work with, but also shows other people the value of that and how that's important. It doesn't feel right to be creating like micro projects that don't move someone forward. So bigger picture thinking is 100% where I'm adding the most value. And part of that journey has been realizing that I actually add this bigger picture content. I'm not here to just go, here's one piece of work. I'm here to go, how do we move you towards your business goals? And going on that journey myself has given me the clarity to be able to articulate that to other people as well.
I think you've kind of showed me that when we talk about a logo, and people perhaps come to you for just a logo and actually the understanding of where that fits into the brand, but actually it's not just so much more than that, but it's the logo is almost the cherry on the cake. And actually, do people understand their brand, and then does the logo articulate that, and does their brand statements and all of those sorts of things? And I think that's something you've really taught me over the last few years, is that deeper understanding and the about face way of doing things, instead of going, I would like someone to make me a logo, actually going, do you understand what you're trying to do? And then almost coming about it from a different way of thinking.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to work on a statement or a piece to communicate this, but the place that I'm at the moment is I'm thinking heavily on like countries' flags. That's such a banner or a symbol that represents so much. But if the UK flag, the Union Jack, changed, it doesn't change who we are as a country. It doesn't change anything about us, but it acts as a figurehead for people to look at and go, that's what the UK is, and that's what they stand for. In the same way that, like, the US are so patriotic and they stand behind their flag so fiercely, the brand is an opportunity for people to rally behind a cause that they feel passionate about, whether that's lifestyle and culture, or whether that's a movement or a community that they want to be a part of. The logo doesn't embody what that brand is or what that company is about, but it provides a figurehead for you to rally around. And the logo doesn't matter. The why and the story behind what you're doing matters, but that doesn't mean you don't care about the logo, but it's not what you lead with. The foundations behind why your company exists, why your brand is important, or why your community is special far outweighs anything that you do with a logo. And it's just another tool to point people at your story, but it's not your story. So you won't find any logos that I'm creating that are including an icon that is relevant to the topic matter, because it's just, there's no point to it. It doesn't serve any purpose. I'm here to go, right, what's the bigger picture? What's the message that we're trying to create? And then helping you create all of the touch points that go with that to create something far bigger than a single piece or single logo.
You said there you've kind of grown into that space. So who were either the key influencers or books that you've read or people that you've come across on this journey that have kind of made the penny drop a little bit or actually influenced that?
It's really hard to single out a single source or catalyst for that changing. I think I've been working in this world for about 15 years now, and the more work that I do, the more I realize that to do brands a good service, if you don't get the why and you don't get behind it, get the thinking behind it ironed out to begin with, you simply can't do a good job. It just you're building on just terrible foundations. I've got quite a broad mix of influences. So I listen to a lot of podcasts by creators. I'm heavily into books by people like Paul Arden, and like the books by Do. So Gavin Strange, who does Do Fly, was a particular catalyst in me sort of quitting my job and starting my own company. But I don't think there's any one source that's motivated how I've reached this point, but filling yourself up with multiple sources of inspiration. I heard there's it's not so much a phrase, but if you're drawing influence and inspiration from the same places as everyone else, you're going to create the same work that everyone else creates. So for me, it's really important to keep a really wide spread of influences to be able to pull from every industry, every life experience that I have, so I can put together something that feels far more holistic as a solution for a brand. So I feel like I've managed to awkwardly sidestep giving you a straight answer, but it's not as simple as I look at this person. I've got plenty of influences, and there's some amazing creatives out there, but I think to reach this point, it's because I keep my influences broad rather than specific.
There's a couple of words that I want to pick out that I've seen there already. So the first one was around community, and the second one was a very subtle statement weaved in there is around crossing paths with Do and quitting my job and founding my business, which is kind of a throwaway statement, but I feel like we need to dive into that a little bit. So just take me on that journey of going, oh, okay, I've had an experience and now I'm going to quit my job. Because for most people out there, they'll be going, hold on, what? So take us through it.
I've got quite a strong moral compass. It's important to me to feel aligned with the work that I'm doing. And I was a lead designer at a company, and long story short, I no longer aligned with what they were trying to create. The mission was far more financial focused, or it felt at least financial focused, as opposed to growth focused. And I think when you're a brand designer, your goal is to help people grow or develop or achieve something. And those needs weren't being met. But as much as it sounds negative, they were kind enough to support me in attending an event in Wales called the Do Lectures, where I think it's, by some of its fans, I think it's been described as like TED Talks but in a field, which is not massively far from the truth, but it's a collection of really fantastic individuals, speakers, attendees, and you go and listen to these talks in a cowshed in West Wales, and you have dinner with everyone, you sleep in tents, really lovely tents, and I essentially came away from that feeling like I had my eyes opened to people that were working with projects they were passionate about, brands, people. I left feeling like I'd opened Pandora's box, and it was like, okay, where does this take me? And essentially I came back and went, well, I'm not going to work for someone else that doesn't meet my needs as a creative. It's not, I want to stress it, I'm not sitting here slamming my previous employers, but there was a mismatch between where I wanted to go and where they were going. And my wife works for herself and has led a really crazy and awesome freelance life. And I thought, well, look, I've got nothing to lose by seeing where this takes me. And I handed in my notice. I spent a few months very nervously building out a business that would allow me to freelance from anywhere I wanted to work, and then building up a small client base from that point. And essentially, my marketing strategy has only ever been do great work and be kind to people. So if I can keep doing great work and be someone that people want to work with and recommend, ultimately, that's been my best, that's been the most useful tool, I guess. It's not a tool. It's just been a useful way for me to go, if I keep doing good work and I keep being kind to people, work seems to keep coming in. That doesn't mean it's easy. I don't just sit back and wait for the work to roll in, but that's essentially the framework that has provided me 6 years of continuous busyness, and I've been able to grow from that point to a place where now I've got some really fantastic clients. I'm pretty much busy all year round. I'm able to work from anywhere in the world, and I'm able to pull in freelancers and other creatives to work with me. And to go full 360, I'm still lucky to be loosely connected with the Do Lectures, and I volunteer there at the event that I attended. So yeah, that's it's been a huge influence in getting me here. I'm an avid reader of a lot of their books and some of their podcasts, and listening to the talks from events that I've not been able to attend has been one of those sources of inspiration as well. So yeah, that's definitely a key influence for getting me here. But the community is all about support and encouragement, and everyone that I've met along the way has been absolutely happy to share advice and their own experiences that have led me to this point. So it would be impossible for me to have got here without numerous communities and spaces that allow you to be proactive and creative and take risks. So
you finished there talking about taking risk, and I think every time you kind of look over the crest of the hill, every time another year comes around, there seems to be another challenge. Over the last 3 to 4 years, with obviously all the restrictions and stuff, obviously certain businesses were very much affected by that. A lot of companies had their budget slashed, and I guess the agility aspect of what you've done in the sense of being very creative as a person, being able to adapt and being able to try out different things has allowed you to navigate that. But no one could have said back when you started that 5, 6, 7 years later would be sitting in a studio having a conversation, having just navigated a pandemic and everything else that we've gone through. So what would you go back and say to yourself in that first year, knowing what you know now? Because looking forwards, I think in 7 years' time, we have no idea where you could be. Mm-hmm. But actually, I don't think all that long ago, you wouldn't have believed we were sitting here now.
No, and I definitely check in with the fact that when I registered myself as a company, I called it Contour Creative Studio because I wanted to have a physical studio, and I didn't want to over limit it. So the fact that it uses the word creative in there felt slightly freeing. I think if I were to go back, or if I were able to sort of share any advice to the former me, it would be surrounding the space of things are scary until they're not. And if I was unable to fit, I'll rephrase that. Every opportunity that I've felt scared has been a pivotal moment in me moving forward in my business. So not knowing how something will work out, not knowing if I could do the best job on this project, or not knowing how this may turn out at the end of this podcast even. All of the things that have led me to my most exciting opportunities have been terrifying. And I remember vividly, I think I took a photo of it actually. I wrote the phrase, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And I drew the comfort zone in like a cloud, and then like a post-it note saying like where I am or something like that. And I'm not good at reminding myself that it's scary, but the scary stuff leads you to the fun stuff. And I think if I were able to tell myself that in a way that I could like digest it and then be able to sort of replay it back in my head when it does get scary, I think that's the advice I'd give version 1 of me almost. But it is scary, and I think anyone that's running their business and growing it and navigating things like pandemics or like the cost of living crisis, I think anyone that is sitting there not scared, or at least not aware of the concerns that exist, you're not sitting there able to navigate or transition through changes. So for example, like AI is such a fear-mongering like situation in the creative world at the moment, and some people are really unnerved by it. But if I sit there and bury my head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist, there's no solution out there that I can present myself with. So if I lean into the fact that it's scary, but I'm going to play with it and see what happens, that gives me a far wider reach to find a positive opportunity than it does to navigate it and just be terrified and closed off to the idea of it being something fun and exciting. So I think across the board, the making peace with the fact that it's scary and being comfortable being uncomfortable is, I think, what I have to return to, whether I'm talking to day one me or version one of me in this role, or even like me at the weekend when I'm scared about a project that's kicking off or whatever it might be. That's the norm. So feeling comfy when it's not comfy, I think is really important.
I attended a talk very recently for a guy called Tom Bates, who we had on the podcast in season 11. Sports psychologist, works with many of the best athletes on the planet, and he talks a lot about, heading into a forest and going down a path that you've been down before. We know where it ends. If you've walked those footsteps before, you know where they take you. And I think, let's talk in the modern day and age, a lot of us can relate to that. Imagine going out without Google Maps on a road and heading somewhere you don't know. It is a bit unnerving, but actually you end up stumbling across some incredible places. And if we look at that as a metaphor, that seems to be where we've got to now. And I'd be curious to kind of flip that question a little bit. And I asked that to Barrett, one of our mutual friends that we met at the Do Lectures in 2022. And I said to him, if you could go forwards to 50-year-old self and they were looking back to you right now, what advice would they give you, knowing where you are right now?
What a horrifically brilliant question. I don't know if it's as simple as just keep going. And what I mean by that is every time I look back on when I've been scared or unnerved or haven't felt like things are working out, I've always just kept going. Even at like deciding what I wanted to do at university, the conversation that I had with my dad was just do something you love, like put your energy there. So I don't necessarily like it, saying that to myself now. I don't know where that takes me, but I'm not ready to stop this journey. And I don't even know if I've got a destination. I don't know if there's a tick, I've completed it for my life. I don't know what that will be. And people throw around the statement like it's about the journey, not the destination. But I'm someone that likes a plan. I like to know where things go. And I think I'm slowly getting better at relinquishing that need to meet that destination want. And I definitely think that like I'm semi-recently a dad, and I think that has positively influenced that journey too. Part of this isn't all about me anymore. It's not my journey. Like I'm not looking to get to my destination. It's how can I help my daughter get to hers, possibly. And I think that permeates through to my business as well. But I think just keep going. I definitely haven't got a better answer that I can give you now, but at the moment it's just keep going.
Well, the nice thing is that we're going to do a series of these because we've already had that conversation about going forwards, because I think it's taken a while for us to both get to a place where this is kind of, we're comfortable sitting down and going through this with, I guess, a level of clarity of where we're both at. And I think it's exciting looking forwards, both for you individually, but also the impact you've had on me. We're heading back to do for you. It's quite a few years on the bounce for me. It's my second visit. And I think I'm looking forwards to where this creative journey takes me. But I want to say on public record, thank you for helping me get this started, because it is taking the first step and then just keep going. And if I'd have said, hey, we'd be knocking on the door of 100 episodes and sitting on a sofa in your studio back pre-pandemic, we'd have probably both gone, maybe, but I'm not sure. So yeah, it's been really, really cool just to kind of explore this today. And I'm curious to see where it goes next. But as I said, we're going to revisit in some future episodes, because I'm sure there's plenty more to go through. But Adam, thank you so much. Anyone who's been watching this today or listening, please make sure you check out all the links in the notes below, because there's going to be a hell of a lot that's going on with Adam in the studio over the coming months and years. And also a huge thanks to Lauren, who's been leading our photography and videography today. And we'll make sure we include the notes to that as well. But Adam, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation there. And as we said at the start, there are lots more to come. Be sure to hit subscribe and share the episode with at least one person you think would find it useful. And we will be back very soon with another episode of the Rogue Monkey Podcast.